So, I design a lot of characters. Some might say it's the entire point of my channel, but there are only so many blue-coded characters with star motifs that a guy can make. So how do I keep my character designs interesting to look at when some of them share the same design elements? I don't know. Why are you asking me? I was thinking a lot about my character design process recently, and I have a couple of people ask me in the comment section of legitimately every single video how I come up with my character designs, even though the videos themselves are literally about that. Not to worry, dear viewers, because I've boiled down my 15+ years of designing characters into 4 kind of simple tips for you to incorporate into your own process if you want to. You don't have to, but you can if you want. You don't have to do all 4 of these, you don't even have to do one of these. I don't do all 4 of these in every single character design that I make, but I've designed dozens of characters for this channel, and I will probably design dozens more. And these are the things that I find myself using most often in order to make my characters look interesting and distinct from one another. Plus, they're just kind of fun. But first, I want to tell you about arguably my favorite character designing tool. Guess what? We're back! This video is sponsored by my favorite digital tool and my saving grace in times of disorganized desperation, Milanote. Milanote is an all-in-one digital bulletin board that can be used to organize notes, images, GIFs, color palettes, lists, videos, you name it, I've probably put it on a Milanote board. As true lucky heads know, I use Milanote in pretty much every single video. Here's a few for videos I've made in the past, and it's become an incredibly important character design tool for me. I use it to organize reference images, character details and notes, color palettes, pictures of all the outfits my character has in their wardrobe. If I've thought of it, it's going in the Milanote board. My favorite thing to do is absolutely load a board full of ideas and notes and then come back to it later to make it look all pretty for presentations. It's an amazing way to take all of the jumbled thoughts rotating in my brain and streamline them for future reference. I recently began working on a pretty intense project overhauling a certain terrible movie that required a place to store notes, charts, timelines, and images. And there was no better place than a Milanote board. If you have a project that you're working on, Milanote has dozens of templates for you to start with, ranging from mood boards to timelines to design briefs. I've got boards that only have notes, boards that only have pictures, and plenty of boards that have a combination of any of the other types of media that Milanote can hold. You don't even have to do any work. Milanote's web clipper makes it easier than ever to take images from literally anywhere on the internet and immediately add them to your board. The best part is that I can add to a board from my computer before reviewing it from my phone and vice versa. I'm a very practical person who doesn't like to use many different apps and websites if one website can do it all, and Milanote is definitely that website. If you want to give Milanote a try completely for free, go to the link on screen or in the description to start your next creative project. Thank you to you guys for checking out Milanote, and thank you as always to Milanote for your support of the channel and for sponsoring this video. Tip number 1 is not to lock yourself into one box. Now, what does this even mean? Essentially, don't attach yourself to one idea or motif too quickly. This is especially applicable if you are redesigning a character, whether it's a character from a media you enjoy or an old OC. It can be kind of painful to change elements that have been present in their design for a long time, like a hairstyle, a main color, or something similar. Especially if you're worried about retaining their recognizability, you can be hesitant to change some or any aspects of their design that are the most important to them. Even early in the character design process, you can have an idea that is solely built off of one particular thing. Like if you find a hairstyle that you really like and want to use for an original character and you base the entire rest of the character around that, it can be difficult if you decide later that that hairstyle doesn't really fit them anymore. Take for example my OC Charlotte. She has been orange since I first designed her in middle school, and even after changing animal types and hair lengths and story roles, she's still been orange. That has been her main color since she was introduced. However, during my most recent redesign of her, I quickly realized that no matter how much I tried to change her outfit, the orange just wasn't really working anymore. I just couldn't get the specific shades to work no matter what color I used for accents. But orange was the main thing that had been consistent in all of her designs, and I felt like changing it was changing who she was as a character. I'm pretty picky about character color coding. I grew up in the era of girls' cartoons where every single character had an assigned color, and all of their outfits and their magical powers were all in that color. And so me changing her main color meant changing her entire personality. But alas, I simply could not get this orange to work, so I decided to try out a few other colors. And eventually I settled on this teal that I really liked, but that was unfortunate because blue is kind of the exact opposite of orange. But after playing around with it for a while, I actually ended up liking this teal so much more than I liked the orange. And that's not just because I don't really like orange. She's an engineer and very much believes in the supremacy of technology, so changing her from this country-looking girl to a cool techie aesthetic really fit in better with her character. And I like this redesign so much more than I like any of the originals. Plus, experimenting with new design concepts can never hurt. You can always go back to the original if you find that the new one just isn't working for you. But changing around small parts of their design, like individual colors and design motifs, even if you really don't want to, can open the floodgates for changes that you never would have thought to make in the first place, but that you end up liking so much more. Number 2 is to make OCs in pairs or groups. And I don't just mean design one OC, move on to the next one, and then design another OC after that, and so on and so forth. I mean design multiple characters at the same time while referencing each of them next to each other. Well, it doesn't have to be next to each other. Most of the time in my videos, I'm not just designing one character, I'm often designing multiple next to each other, like redesigning my first 3 Magical Girl OCs or redesigning the Caramella Girls. Please go watch the Caramella Girls video. I worked really hard on it. And what I used to do in my earlier videos was design a character and then move on to the next character, maybe have the original on screen, but oftentimes I would just redesign them individually. And that definitely can work, but if you're designing multiple characters like a group of friends or characters that are supposed to work together in a team, sometimes it can really benefit your design process and speed it up a whole lot more if you just throw them all onto one canvas. This also helps you notice any repeating design motifs that you may use subconsciously. For instance, in this one, every single one of them is wearing some kind of jacket, and in this one, all of their pants are the same color. And I probably never would have noticed that until I put them all together in the same image, and I would have saved myself a whole lot of time if I had just designed them together in the first place. For example, I did this in my redesigns of my first OCs, especially because magical girl silhouettes can tend to be kind of samey. Designing all 3 of them at the same time on the same canvas not only saved me a whole lot of time, but also I could change around elements that I saw were being repeated or clashed with the other designs. Obviously, this is not that helpful if you're only designing one character, but this can be useful in tons of situations, like if you're designing an OC for an already existing media. You can put characters from that media on your canvas or have them open nearby so you can see while you're drawing what design elements you may not have noticed before and want to incorporate. My third tip is don't start with drawing a reference image. When I was younger, when I had an idea for a new OC, I would go straight into drawing a full body reference image for them, which would become their design for all time. Until I inevitably decided I wanted to change a small part of their design and had to make an entirely new reference sheet. This obviously is not only a waste of time, but can hinder your artistic growth by limiting your art to essentially 3/4 angle full bodies. Boring. Obviously, when it comes to designs for videos, I very rarely do more than one piece for each character, but when designing an OC, I hardly ever jump straight into a reference image. Now, I will admit that for most of the designs that I do for videos, if they aren't OCs or designs I'm planning on reusing, I oftentimes do not draw them more than once. However, that's not the situation that most people are in, so if I'm designing an actual OC or a design that I plan to use often, it almost always starts in my sketchbook. Looking back on it now, I feel like this is kind of just stating the obvious, the idea of not jumping directly into a reference image without iterating on a character design. But you would not believe how many of us young artists when I was 12 or 13 would have an idea for a character and then just immediately draw out a full body reference image. And in my experience, this creates a kind of anxiety to quote unquote get it right the first time. And this is why I actually don't make a lot of reference images anymore. Not that I don't think that they're useful, but when you draw a character over and over without the pressure of trying to stick to an official design, you find that the character design kind of builds itself in a way. I definitely think if you're planning on commissioning art that it is very useful to have a reference image. I'm just saying don't make it the very first thing that you draw. Okay, moving on. My last tip is to make a mood board. Wait, don't leave. I know I have beaten this dead horse several times over, but I actually have a different kind of mood board to suggest to you guys today. I promise. Make a mood board, but with non-design related items. So no outfits, facial features, hair, etc. Or other characters. Only objects, themes, landscapes, aesthetics, colors, vibes, etc. Something I find is a fun little challenge to do when redesigning characters is adding objects I associate with them into a mood board, like flowers, food, landscapes, colors, etc. You can see this pretty clearly on the mood board I made for my OC Mitsuo from Ouran High School Host Club. I talked about this a bit in a video I made a couple weeks ago on things to do with your OCs without drawing, but that one was more focused on like objects they would have in their bag or outfits they would wear. For this one, I am purely talking about vibes. A fun way to practice your mood board skills is to reverse engineer your favorite character by making a mood board for them without any outfits or otherwise identifiable parts of their design. Take, for example, this mood board I made for a nondescript fictional character. If I had just put the Fix It Felix Jr. arcade cabinet, a picture of a blue shirt, and a gold hammer, you would immediately know who this is, and it hardly serves to add to his characterization. However, I've added in pictures of food that I associate with him, general 80s aesthetic images, some pictures of tools and hardware, an old blue Chevy truck, and other assorted old-timey and country-esque pictures to convey his personality without actually adding in any images of him or anything explicitly associated with him. I've been very particular about the images I've added in as well. There's lots of blues, but the mood board as a whole is rather warm-toned rather than the often vibrant neon associated with the 80s, and the grungy dark tones associated with workshops and toolboxes. However, I have made a fatal, disgusting mistake with this mood board. Comment if you know what it is before I reveal it. I'll give you a few seconds. Did you guess it? I added a picture of pie that has ice cream on top, but Fix It Felix is actually lactose intolerant.
I'm lactose intolerant.
I am such a fake fan, I'm such a LARPer! I'll just have to remind him to take his Lactaid. Anyways, you can do this with any character whether they exist yet or not. Here's a really quick one I made for my OC pit in like 10 minutes, and this immediately tells you a lot about his character and personality without showing him. Here's him, by the way. Sorry if you had to cover your nose when he appeared, cause he reeks! Anyways, you don't have to not put any physical traits or outfits on your boards. I just personally find it fun to see if I can encapsulate a character without actually alluding to them physically. I really cannot stress the importance of mood boards in my character design process, and not just because this video is sponsored by Milanote, because even if it wasn't, I would still recommend that every artist who wants to get into character design try making ones for their OCs or their favorite characters. It's a very fun way to kill 20 minutes. Anyways, those were just a couple of my character design tips. Obviously, there are other factors that play into my character design process, but if I had to pick the 4 biggest ones, these are some pretty strong contenders. What are your favorite character design tips that you would like to share with the class? Make sure to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much to my $7 patrons who are listed on screen. And thank you, as always, to the people who paid for me to take this little Felix plushie I made to Universal Studios. That was a joke, by the way. I went with my parents. My $10 patrons, Puntastic Artist, Little Wolfine, VU, Neko Jack, Bumby Bumblebee, Strawberry Soda Ken, Cheeseman Official, Leanne, Whimsigoth Cowboy, All Cape No Cow, Ghosty, and the Meme Bugs. As well as all my other patrons, all of my subscribers, everybody who watches this video, everybody who likes and comments. Patrons get early access to video art, as well as Patreon exclusive videos for tiers 5 and up. I have videos ranting about my OCs, ranking my fictional boyfriends was one of them. So if for some reason you are dying to hear more of my voice, that is where you can go if you want. If you're new, make sure to subscribe. If you're not new, make a new account and subscribe again. I'm Lucky Inkyo. Hope you're having a good summer, and I will see you very soon.